Okay, so we learned quite a lot of the halachot of Shabbat. Baruch Hashem. We say every day, כל השונה הלכות בכל יום, מובטח לו שהוא בן העולם הבא. Everyone who learns halachot every day, he's promised, he knows, he has place in the world to come. And hi, Danny. Good to see you. Good to see you, Danny. Obviously, you have to keep them. That's for sure. But as soon as you learn, so you're there. You also do it. And halachot usually means the minimum of halachot is 2. How could it be that someone who learns halachot, he has a portion in the world to come? And that's what we can see is we are learning here. Every week we learn a bit and a bit and a bit. And we covered, I can't say most of the halachot of Shabbat, since Shabbat has many, many halachot. But we did cover quite a big portion of the halachot of Shabbat. So in the last 2 weeks, every time I ask myself, what didn't we cover? What still are we lacking? We learned Bishul, we learned davening of Shabbat, we learned pray, we learned Kiddush, we learned about Lechem Mishneh, we learned about Havdalah, we learned about Borer, and many other things we learned about. There are a few things we still didn't learn, like how to treat. No, we even learned about some of the halachot of sick people on Shabbat. We did learn. We did not learn. Maybe that will be next week. Are you allowed to clap hands on Shabbat? Are you allowed to dance on Shabbat? Different things. How to enjoy Onik Shabbat. So we learned Onik Shabbat. We learned a bit about Onik Shabbat when we learned about the meals of Shabbat. And today we'll learn about Tchumin of Shabbat. We will learn about the Eiruv and Tchumin. We won't cover all of the halachot because we have only half an hour more or less than half an hour, and it's been after a long, hot day. Why is it? 20 minutes. So we have 20 minutes. Yeah. So we won't touch all of the halachot. We'll just touch the basic halachot. Yeah, and explain the terms that we have. So we call the string outside the city, we call it an Eiruv. And the truth is that it's not the best way to call it, not the best name. But what does an Eiruv mean? What's an Eiruv? It's a string. So it's a tzvat hapetach. So we'll explain the terms so that we understand what we're talking about. According to Torah law, one isn't allowed to transfer things from a private domain to a public domain. Reshut hayachid to reshut harabim. And transferring things could be sometimes maybe the most simple and easiest thing to do. On the other hand, we're stopping from doing that, refraining from that, really shows the idea of Shabbat. And that idea of Shabbat is be. Be. Sit down, rest. After running the whole week, just be. Stop. Don't carry things from one place to another place. Be in your private domain if you want to go to a public domain. So you can be without carrying things. Feel the feeling of Shabbat. How do you feel Shabbat? In being without carrying things from one place to another place. That is a very important aspect of Shabbat. I'm not transferring things. That out of all the 39 melachot of Shabbat, only 2 are written in the Torah explicitly. The rest Chazal learned from the Mishkan. And that is one of them of Al Yitzeish Mimkomo, don't move from one place to another place on Shabbat. And Chazal understand that it was also the Tchum of Shabbat, which hopefully we'll discuss today. And also, don't carry things on Shabbat. Now, sometimes it's very hard not to carry things on Shabbat. You want to carry your child, you want to carry your siddur to shul, you have a key to your house and you want to put it in your pocket. So the Torah left us maybe built-in loopholes. And they're built-in loopholes. If the city is surrounded by a wall, so all the city becomes a private domain. All the city becomes a private domain. How does the wall look like? 2 options, or 2 main options. One of them is a wall around the city. Yesterday I was in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has a wall around the city. Okay, Ma'ale Edomim. Not all of Ma'ale Edomim. If you go down to the Gilgal has a fence around it. I think also parts of Efes Shesh and Efes Sheva have a fence around, so that makes it into Reshut hayachid if all the city has a fence around it. Sometimes also doors can be called a fence, at least halachically. How does a door look like? It's also could be for mezuzah and for Sukkot. It's two poles, and right above it, exactly above it, you have another pole or string, okay, or something. So you have two poles, and above it you have something else. And the idea of the string around the city is a tzurat petach, the shape of an entrance. So all the city has shapes of entrance around it. According to many poskim, this is like a wall. And we aren't going into details here. We do have machloket between the poskim. What's the maximum distance you can have between the poles? Is it 10 amot, about 5 meters? Can it be a long distance between them? Today, there's quite a long distance between the poles. I didn't measure it, but I think there's at least 20 meters between one pole and another pole. Otherwise, it's too expensive. So the poles around the city with the strings above them, what we call an Eiruv, actually imitates a fence, okay, or a wall around the city. And just to make it clear, you can't make a wireless Eiruv. Right? We can have Wi-Fi. Yeah, we can't make a wireless Eiruv. I could put here a router and all the city. If you can get reception, so that's there's no such thing. It doesn't work. Okay? It really has to be a physical. There's a limit to how much you can maybe expand this loophole. The minimum we need is two poles and above it a wire. Okay.
At the potential, they would string it, but most of the time it had the potential to be closed, but most of the time it was not enclosed.
That's a physical gate. So if you have a physical gate that can open and close, and also does sometimes open and close, it needs to also open and close. There could also be a gate, especially when we are talking about an opening in a fence. Okay, if we have a whole fence, and in the fence you have a gate. So depending on the size of it, and if you have, it's fine depending on the size of it. Yeah, it happens a big shayla population. We also won't go here to Rishut Rabim, unless we have time to more go into detail. But relying on the Eiruv isn't such a simple thing. It isn't such a before we rely on it. But yeah, you do see many people in Chabad, I think, in many places, especially out of Israel, they don't rely on the Eiruv. So the first thing we need for the Eiruv is the wall around it. Another thing we need for the Eiruv, and that is having an Eiruv. So what does the word Eiruv come from? The word Eiruv is le'arev, which is in Hebrew to mix, okay, to mix up. How do we mix up? Chazal said, okay, we have a private domain, okay, and we have a public domain. Many times we have things which technically look like a private domain, but they feel like a public domain. Let's show an example. Okay, an example. In the olden days, you used to have mevo'ot. Okay, mavo is a small street, closed on three sides of it, closed on three sides, but you have many buildings open into it. It's closed. Mostly it's closed, so it is called a private domain. But someone walking in it, how does it feel? Like a public domain. Everyone can walk in there. Also, it was very common in those days. My great-great-grandparents, they built Batei Werner in Jerusalem, in Mea Shearim. Great-great-grandparents. So it's I'm not sure what's the right term for that, but you have a few houses open into one yard. What is it? A courtyard. A courtyard. A courtyard. Yeah, exactly. Courtyard in the Mishnah.
So there's also an area that is surrounded by walls.
Yeah. So it's a courtyard. You have in many places, Nachlaot, Mea Shearim, it used to be very common in those days. Okay, Mediterranean. Maybe that's how they had them. So what do you do in the courtyard? In the olden times, yeah, but first it's a community, right? Everyone lives together. You have the same oven many times. I'm not sure if they had washing machines. They didn't have washing machines, but they had a washing basket or washing something, and you used to have it in the courtyard. How do you call the thing that you use to grind wheat in that? Mortar. Okay. Learning new difficult words today. So not everyone had one in their house. There's no reason to have one for each family. It takes up space and the house is one so big. So you have one in the courtyard and everyone uses it. So the courtyard is a private domain. It's surrounded by four walls. It's a private domain. How does it feel like? A public domain. So Chazal said you can't carry from a private domain to a courtyard or to those small streets called mevoot, although both of them are private domains, but it feels like a public domain. Since Chazal, they made the decree. They also said if you do something which will remind you that it's a private domain, that's fine. How do you do it? You bring a piece of, every family used to bring some bread, and they used to put it in one basket inside one of the houses. And by that, everyone said, we are now like one big family. Okay? We are mixing ourselves up as one big family, and everyone could eat from the bread there, and they really become like one big family. From many individuals who go into a public domain that belongs to many individuals, it becomes to one unit of one family.
I mean, it doesn't seem like we have an Eiruv, but every year before Pesach.
So the Rav, exactly.
They used to bring a box of matzah and.
So that's exactly, we're getting to that.
I actually used to
We also have it here. Every city has it. Okay, so the original Eiruv is each one brings some bread, and bread doesn't last for such a long time. So every week they had to bring another piece of bread, and then they make everyone to be one. Le'arev, they mix up everyone to be one. A few conditions. We won't go into those conditions. We're now explaining the terms. Today, it's much easier. We have matzah. Matzah can last for a long time. And the rabbi of the city usually takes a box of matzah and he says, I give it a present to all of the people in the city. So all the people in the city have now a portion in the box of matzah that the rabbi has. So that's the Eiruv we do. So in order to be able to carry inside a city, you have to have at least two things. We usually actually have more, but at least two things. One, if it has a wall around it. And the second, that there's an Eiruv. Everyone here belongs to the city. So when you go to the rabbi's house, maybe one of the big shuls in town, or everywhere has something else, they put it in somewhere else. You'll see a box of matzah or say the word Eiruv. That's the idea of an Eiruv. Having those two things with a few other conditions allows us to carry in the city. Okay, so that's the idea of an Eiruv. And we usually don't meet those halachot, but sometimes we do meet halachot, and sometimes we do need to learn them. And I'll just give a few examples. Let's say you're camping out. You're doing a Shabbat camping out. If it's just your family, you're all eating from one meal, just your family, how can you carry? You have to make a fence around you. How you can make or a fence, or Tzurat HaPetach, and there's rules how you do it. So you can make Tzurat HaPetach, have poles, have a string going exactly above it. I'll tell you some funny story about it. And that's if you have one family. When I was young, my grandparents took us on a trip to Africa, and we wanted to bring with us poles so we can make an Eiruv for Shabbat. I think we were for 2 or 3 Shabbatot there. I don't remember how long, but a few Shabbatot there. We wanted to make an Eiruv. So we want if you'll be able to find sticks. You won't be able to find sticks. We thought the easiest thing will be to bring bamboo sticks from Israel. So we bring a pile of bamboo sticks, we bring it to the airport, and we go out from Israel, it's fine. We go to South Africa, I think it was, I'm not sure exactly. And they asked us, what are those sticks for? How will you explain them? What are those sticks for? Religious reasons, we brought sticks for it. And then he asked us, is that the game? And we said, yes, it's a game. Okay, fine. Just take the sticks and you can go flip. So sometimes we do mean that, okay, sometimes you do build an Eiruv around you, camping out, sometimes you do have it. If you're camping out a few families together, it's not enough to have an Eiruv. Okay, you have or the sticks and strings above it. You have to also have all of you belong to one meal. Okay, you have, so if you're all having one meal and you have one pot, so automatically you're all connected. But if you have a few houses and each one has their own meal and has their own kitchen and they eat by themselves, you have to make the Eiruv, and then you can learn the halachot a bit deeper of making a Eiruv, of how to do this Eiruv.
If they finish the pot.
So the pot needs to exist until the beginning of Shabbat. Pot needs to exist for Shabbat. Yeah. If you finish it before Shabbat, you have a problem. So don't finish it on Friday. Yeah. Another halacha which we'll just mention it is the Tchum. Okay, there's a Tchum of Shabbat. Tchum of Shabbat, we learn from the Torah and from Chazal. So part of it is the right, part of it is rabbinical. We won't go into the details. What's the right, what's rabbinical, what measurements. But according to most poskim, the 2,000 amah is rabbinical. And Chazal said, don't leave your house for more than 2,000 amah from the city. Okay, from the edge of the city, don't walk more than 2,000 amah from the edge of the city. Okay, so that's even if you aren't carrying anything. Your pockets are empty, you went out of those strings, you went out of the Eiruv. Chazal said from the Eiruv, you have 2,000 amah, and that's it. Okay? Now, the 2,000 amah, again, we're just touching this ideas. You take the city, you draw a square around the city. So the city is circular, you also gain the corners, right? Because you draw a square, and then from there, you take a line of 2,000 amah and draw a square. So you're actually gaining, if you go from the corners, you're gaining quite a bit. 2,000 amah is just under a kilometer, depending how you measure it, just under a kilometer. So from the point of the Eiruv, you have about a kilometer you're allowed to walk from the city. And sometimes I have a friend who used to teach Bar Mitzvah in non-religious places, and he had to sometimes on Shabbatot walk for quite a long distance. And there, making the city, checking exactly how it is, making a square around the city and another square of 2,000 amah from the inner square, sometimes you can gain quite a bit. From here, we have another thing called Eruvei Tchumin. Okay, exactly. We can leave food, and that needs to be there at least until the beginning of Shabbat. Eruvei Tchumin means I'm leaving food at the edge of the 2,000 amah, and I'm actually having in mind that my place, okay, where I'm sitting for Shabbat isn't my city. I'm moving houses. Right? I'm moving to my meal, right? Usually you want to go to where we eat. So if I leave food just under a kilometer from the edge of the city, and I say Hol Nusach, I say a text, I say also a bracha, we say, I'm actually transferring my position. And I'm saying I'm not in the city, I'm in the food. So now I don't measure 2,000 amah from me, okay, to each side of the city. You measure 2,000 amah to each side from the food. So you have 2,000 amah to the right, 2,000 amah to the left, 2,000 amah to the front, 2,000 amah to the back from the food. So if you calculate it in the right position, okay, and put it in the right spot, you can get 2,000 times 2 is 4,000 amah. You get 4,000 amah, approximately 2 kilometers. So you can walk 2 kilometers. Okay, and that needs to be placed in the exact spot to get the maximum measurements. Maybe also you won't go into the whole details of the food. What do you leave? Well, how do you leave? But that's called Eruvei Tchumin. Okay, I'm mixing up my tchum. I'm transferring my place where I'm for Shabbat. I'm not in the city. I will be somewhere else where my food is.
How many times can you do that?
You can do it once because you live only in one place. Because there's maybe small, you can't live in a few places. If I'm saying a restaurant, you say rest. But I all live all here, all there, and that happens at the beginning of Shabbat. So the beginning of Shabbat, you have to be in one place, or at least halachically to be in one place, or in your house, or in your. Okay.
But if this is
We need to end in 20 seconds. Yeah.
this is in terms of you walking, but if there's a
Without carrying, doesn't help you to carry. It is an Eiruv. I won't go into it. Maybe we'll expand a bit more next week. But so we can talk about it a bit more next week. If there's an Eiruv around the city, all the city is considered as one small place. You can walk in all the city. You can walk all of Jerusalem, although Jerusalem is very big, since it's an Eiruv around Jerusalem. So everything is like one small house. Maybe we'll expand about it next week.
From one city to another. Oh, great.
Okay, walk from one city to another. Let's continue with the next week. Okay. Okay.